What if where you are right now is not the end of your story? What if it just gets better from here? Getting to that first 100K is a challenge. I'm going to talk about that right now. I'm going to share with you some encouraging stories of how it feels and how you may be surprised that it's not as hard as you think. And in fact, even more than that, what if this is exactly what you are meant to do? And maybe what you're seeing right now is pain and suffering as you scale that business or make that new life change, make that jump into the unknown. What if this right now is preparing you for the greatest moments in your life and all the people you haven't met yet that are just cheering for you, saying, don't stop, don't give up, you can do it. Today's the day that can change everything. Today, I had a meeting. I had 4 meetings today in different countries with deals that we're engaged in for over $100 million. It's even crazy to say that out loud. If you had seen me 7, 8 years ago, as I was about to level up and I had the God shove out into the uncomfortable, the unknown, it felt like I had just got hit at an intersection, figuratively, by a semi truck. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. Everything I thought I had planned out, this is how it's going to go. I'm building this big kingdom. I'm building up this mountain. Everything is working just like I thought. This was my calling. I felt it, but I felt that calling to the next level. I felt that calling to the next circle. And I want to encourage you today, what you're seeing as maybe you're feeling the struggle, the pain in your business right now. You're in that startup hustle, chewing glass, staring into the abyss. I want to encourage you to keep going today because the greatest things are on the other side. The reason the unknown is scary is just because you don't know what is on the other side. You haven't yet seen what is on the other side. There are all these moments in life when you look back a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, that's where you see even stronger ones. And if you're really pushing farther, you look back and you see, wow, that was exactly where I was supposed to be. And if I hadn't have gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am here today. And it's going to blow your mind. I remember standing at Harvard Yard, giving that commencement speech to over 30,000. I'm first generation college graduate. If you had showed me that picture 5 years earlier, when I didn't understand how this works, let alone Harvard, let alone living in California, 3,000 miles away. How does this even work? I would have had no clue how to start. I would have been scared, but I felt it. I felt that calling. I felt that calling to government, to entrepreneurship. I felt that calling to higher education. And there I was, finishing my bachelor's, my graduate, and standing next to former President George H.W. Bush, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, and giving this speech with no notes, by the way. But if I had seen that photo, it wouldn't have been as scary. I want to encourage you today to see those future mental states of where you are going to be and where you're being called to. If you're watching this video, you already are going for it. You're challenging, you're pushing, you're trying to find that edge. How do I get to that next level? Well, I want to encourage you, your past self, where you were 5 years ago, looks very different than yourself today. Give yourself a 5-year horizon timeline. Imagine where you're going to be in 5 and 10 years from now if you keep going. The scripture says that the Lord is our help and our shield. Our help and our shield. Help meaning he's going to help you through those challenges, help you pull you up the mountain, but also that shield that sometimes might be protecting you from something you don't see in the moment. And it may also be preparing you for where you're going next. So it's either a help or it's a shield. It's either helping you grow stronger or it's protecting you from the worst thing that you don't want to have happen. And you keep following those steps, following that calling. And it says he guides our steps. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. He's going to guide your steps, not just as you're sitting there. I'm just going to sit here and wait for something to happen. It's as you step, as you put out more vessels, that allows him to fill those vessels. So I want to encourage you today. You may be getting help, or you may be getting shielded. Now, if you had fast forwarded to 7 years ago, in that moment where I was carving out that fancy career path, the golden handcuffs, the retirement, it felt so good. And I had written a letter to my future self the night before I started that fancy job. And I said, Philip, don't find yourself getting stuck in the bureaucracy. Don't get stuck wanting more. In fact, I have this exact copy of the letter printed out in the workbook that I help students, our students through. We've now had over 2 million participants in 30 countries and 6 languages. I couldn't have imagined that when I wrote that letter, but I felt it. And I said, Philip, you are meant for more. There's more you meant to do. Don't get stuck here. Learn as much as you can and keep going. That's the gist of it. And then I was carving a place for myself, carving it out in the career path and getting comfortable. Maybe you identify with that today and you're feeling safe and you're feeling comfortable where you are. I want to encourage you, stepping out into the unknown is how the miraculous happens. That's where the miraculous happens. And that's where you're going to meet all these new characters and partners, investors and friends. They're all out there waiting for you in the unknown. But I'm going to give you quickly 4 steps that I've learned over the past 7 years that I was kind of doing originally and kind of stumbling my way through. And now we've refined them, as I mentioned, with all of our participants in the programs. And I want to share that with you all today, looking back exactly what happened and how I got to this moment today, working on 4 different countries, working on ventures that were putting together these deals over $100 million. I felt this calling to business and entrepreneurship, but I didn't understand it. I felt this call to do more around the world. I saw needs and opportunities, but I had no clue how to get there. A guide came into my life, the gold standard, and said, hey, come on, let's go a little bit more. There's more over here. Come on, the water's fine. Jump in. So I jumped in and it was crazy. But how did I get from that scary, dark moment to here? There were a lot of tears, a lot of dark times, a lot of contemplating and reflecting. What am I doing? Well, I'm either getting helped or I'm getting shielded. And I look back now, in the past month, I was being shielded and I was being helped at the same time, because there was that calling up to the next level, to that next circle on the journey. At the same time, I was also being protected from something that was going to hold me back and something that was going to inhibit me, stop me from living out that ultimate purpose and really connecting my passion and the things I really wanted to do. I always had this dream to have a travel room and to go and see places and work with people around the world. And I loved entrepreneurship. And what I was doing was starting to carve my own kingdom, starting to carve my own idea of what success looked like. But there was so much more on the other side. So the first thing I did was I had to stop and look back at what had brought me to where I was. Reflect on the journey. I had reflect on the chapters of the journey. What was it when I was back in those circles and those moments? What was that calling that I felt? And it was entrepreneurship, investment, a movement brand. I felt called to do those things. And those were all threads that have been interwoven into my story. So I can take you to the exact spot in the dark saying, God, help me. What is the next thing? If this is not it, and boy, I tried my 6 different backup plans. I said, no, there must be something more. The next thing, step 2, is love people. I went out and talked to people. If you are ever feeling stuck in your business, in your venture, in your work of your hands, it's probably because you are secluding and withdrawing from other people. The worst punishment that we have come up with as humans is isolation. Isolation. If you think of the maximum prison sentence that you can think of, the worst thing, if you act up, if you get in trouble, going to put you in even more isolation, away from anyone. It's literally hell, ultimate isolation. And we constantly are craving to connect with each other, to work together with each other, which is why I love business. The beautiful magic of business, the miracle of business is that it forces you to meet new people, to work together with people. And so if you're finding yourself stuck trying to get to that first 100K, whether that's dollars or people, go surround yourself with new people. Third, you have to experiment. You have to go out, put yourself out there and run some sprints as quickly as possible to test, build, measure, and learn with these people. So you connect the you, start with you, understanding, build that strong foundation that has brought you here, connecting that with the who, the people you feel called to serve alongside, and together you start running some experiments. What if we tried this? I've spent more time, I feel called to work with entrepreneurs. I feel called to travel and do more things around the world and solve these big problems. What if we try some things out? Let's do some experiments. And we launched our first experiment. I've talked about the clean water venture in Haiti, where we learned and we worked with a membership base, and it continued to learn and grow. So as you go on this, if you're finding stuck, get out there and try experiments. Continue running these experiments. And then fourth is you've got to tell the story. You're constantly refining the story, and how you get to the story is by reflecting on the you, understanding the who and the problems and the needs that they're facing. You combine those and run experiments together. Really, you're running these little circles, these quick stories. And that's what makes the story so interesting. And imagine if you just had a story that just said, one day I was born, I lived, I had a job, and then I died. That's a terrible story. That's very boring. You'll fall asleep. But you want to hear about all the plot twists. You want to hear about the pains. You want to hear about the overcoming. You want to hear about the valleys and the mountaintops and climbing up the rope and almost drowning that dark night when you almost gave up. That's what makes a beautiful story. And then when you combine the you and the who and the adventures that you've had together, you invite more people into the story. And then you have a miraculous thing that's called a movement. That's how you get past the first 100K, the first $100,000, the first 100,000 people. If you get the people, you'll get the dollars. Create a movement.